I cannot believe what I am witnessing as the Milwaukee Bucks lose another game, this time on the back of Giannis scoring 42. The Bucks still find a way to lose thanks to a few different players, including Dame, who had one of the worst games of his Bucks tenure. We're going to break that down and discuss what it means going forward. But before we get into all that, quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. I know the Bucks aren't doing the best right now, but if you're enjoying the daily Bucks content and you're a part of the 80% who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be. Ladies and gentlemen, what a rough outcome to this game. Now, obviously, looking in at the game from a perspective of, hey, the Celtics are probably the better team. It's going to be rough to see what happens in tonight's game. They were leading for a lot and the majority of this game, and they had a collapse in the second half thanks to a few different players. But what an absolute disaster class of a game from Damian Lillard and some other guys as well. And we're going to dive into it all, but it's at the point now where the Milwaukee Bucks are at a very interesting point. Their record is really bad. They don't have their first round pick. That belongs to Brooklyn. And they're fairly healthy aside from, of course, their third star in Chris Middleton. So looking at tonight's game, you look at the starters, everybody played. And again, the big storyline coming in, we'll have a video on it probably later today or tomorrow about the multiple moves that the Bucks have made, referring to, of course, Andre Jackson Jr. getting in the starting lineup. They made some moves getting some other AJ Johnson back in here. So we're at the point now where they're starting Andre Jackson Jr. So Ajax is getting in there. And he did not show much offensively. And what that led to was Doc Rivers making the change to get AJ Green in the game and kind of take over his spot. And I would not be surprised if going forward, AJ Green is the player who starts for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, again, Gary Trent Jr. was hurt today. He wasn't going to factor into the lineup. You obviously have other guys who, Marjon Beauchamp, who's, they're shopping him. He's not going to factor into the lineup. But surrounding injuries, Gary Trent Jr. out. And of course, Chris Middleton also out. So it's at the point now where it's like, hey, what are we doing with our scoring aside from Dame and Giannis? And coming into this game, the big storyline was, hey, Giannis and Dame are starting to finally figure it out. In the first half, there was glimpses of that. We're going to get to Giannis and rant about that in a minute. But the other starters, Taurean Prince, 38 minutes, 9 points, 9 rebounds. He does not score the ball enough. He's not enough of a threat out there. So 9 points in 38 minutes, quite frankly, isn't good enough. You have Brook Lopez, 6 points, a -10 in 28 minutes. Another rough game from Brook Lopez, who he's not doing horrible things, but we know the Milwaukee Bucks are shopping Brook Lopez. But man, oh man, what an unfortunate turnaround for this team. And Andre Jackson Jr., again, he does things defensively. He had the game with 4 steals in his first start that led to a win. A lot of good things were coming from Andre Jackson Jr., but what happened was now the team just, what happened now is the team is just not good enough offensively. Andre Jackson Jr. wasn't providing you anything offensively. They were leaving him open. He wasn't shooting the ball. He went 0 for 2 from 3, and Doc Rivers had to pull the plug on that. He had to take him out simply because, hey, at this point, there's no real benefit to keeping him out there when the Bucks needed scoring options. Giannis had an absolutely monstrous first quarter, putting up 19 points. He was driving to the rim. He even hit a 3 tonight. His free throw shooting is still iffy, but he had 42, 13, and 5. And in a game where you want your stars to step up, especially against a very good Boston Celtics team, one of the better teams, probably the best team in the NBA. You needed your stars to step up. Now, whether that's Giannis, Dame, both of them, you needed them both to have a good game. And if Damian Lillard had even a mediocre game, because this is obviously his worst game of the year probably, the Bucks would have won this game. They obviously collapsed in the fourth. Dame time definitely wasn't Dame time. Damian Lillard struggled mightily. We're going to get into that in a minute. But from Giannis, you love to see that. And again, with all the trade talks and speculation around Giannis Antetokounmpo, he's going to stay a Milwaukee Buck this year in all likelihood. And for him to come out there and have a 42-point effort and no one else on the team score more than 15 points is pretty disappointing. And the fact that Giannis, continued to, he just had a phenomenal game. I can't say it enough, but continued to battle throughout the whole game. Shot 29 shots, and he knew that Dame wasn't feeling it. Dame had a horrific game. But Giannis kept battling, and that's what matters the most at this point in this game. Because, we got to take some positives out of it. And the positives would be, again, AJ Green looks like a lethal three-point shooter. He's shooting 59% coming into this game from three-point land. They need that. Insert him into the starting lineup. And there's a reason that they put AJ Green in instead of Andre Jackson Jr. in the second half. And a lot of it's because AJ Green is he's a way better shooter. Is he as good of a defender? Probably not. But at this point, the Bucks need scoring. They need to do something out there, and that's what they haven't been able to do thus far, and they still weren't able to do it tonight. And then looking at Damian Lillard, a lot of it, you would say his age is showing, and a lot of fans are completely fired up about Damian Lillard, saying he's washed, all these things. He's had a phenomenal season. He's been one of the best point guards in the league and in the East this year. He had a very rough game tonight. He looked a slow step. He looked a step slow, sorry. He looked like he was struggling to get into the paint and create opportunities for himself. He was forcing the ball. And Giannis and Dame both struggled in that third and fourth quarter, respectively. And Dame ultimately only finished with 4 field goals, 1 for 8 from 3. If he hits a couple of those threes, the Milwaukee Bucks win this game with ease and with flying colors. So it's disappointing. But ultimately, I think he's going to bounce back. And I don't think Dame is the bigger concern here. Yes, they would have won if Dame would have played better. But at this point, you're looking at the surrounding cast. Ajax didn't score at all. He had 1 point. Brook Lopez, Taurean Prince, like the rest of the starters combined for like less than 30 points alongside other than Giannis. And it's at the point where it's like you need to score the ball. I've been saying this after every single post-game. Every post-game video I do, I say other guys need to score the ball. You look off the bench. Bobby Portis had a fine game. He had 15 and 7. He was one of the better players offensively, especially. Defense still leaves a lot to be desired, but he was fine. Pat Connaughton had a fine game as well, one of his better games of the season, but still, they weren't doing anything crazy special. And AJ Green, again, he ended up closing the game and was the starter for the second half and going into the second half and beyond, because he's hitting threes, and they needed another weapon alongside Giannis because Giannis was driving, he was creating a ton of pressure. The defense was collapsing on Giannis, and he would kick it out, and no one else could hit a shot. I mean, Taurean Prince hit a few threes, but there's no other on-ball creator aside from Giannis and Dame. You're not getting that from Brook, obviously. You're not getting that from Taurean Prince, obviously. You weren't getting it from Ajax, and you're not really getting it from AJ Green. He's more of a spot-up three-point shooter, but he can at least give you something out there, which no one else was giving. And we saw some Ryan Rollins. He had 3 blocks, an insane pin block. We were thinking, hey, maybe they're actually doing something here. But they weren't, and they ultimately lost. But I like what I'm seeing out of Ryan Rollins. Very solid. But otherwise, there's not many positives to take from this one. It was a brutal game. You look at the Boston Celtics stat line. I mean, Tatum had a bit of a rough game. He had a ton of free throws, 7 for 21 from Tatum. You have Drew Holiday, again, former Milwaukee Buck, as we all know. Their team is just deeper, and it's at the point where, Tatum had the shining game for them, but they had 2 other guys score 15. They had Jaylen Brown had 14. Jaylen Brown had a very bad game, and shout out to the Bucks defense for maintaining and kind of holding both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. They held Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown for most of the game, but when you continue to not give them chances, not score points, they had over a 15-point lead at one point, or something like that. It got brutal. And ultimately, if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan out there, we know what what Giannis said last time after their loss against the New York Knicks. He was mad. Are we okay not competing? I don't know. They competed tonight, but Damian Lillard needs to be able to help Giannis in games like this. That's why they brought him in. They don't have a good enough supporting cast at this point to really win games. That's what it's coming down to. Gary Trent Jr. and Chris Middleton are out. Sure, both of those guys can accumulate a good amount of points. But it's at the point now where if they don't figure this out very soon, I keep saying this after every video, they need to get double digits from somebody else. Give somebody else a chance. Throw AJ Green in the starting lineup. Completely mix things up. Get Taurean Prince out there. Get Brook Lopez out of the lineup. Make a trade for Walker Kessler. Do something, because this team is falling apart, and it's falling apart fast. You don't want that to go down the line into Giannis and him requesting a trade. So let me know in the comments your thoughts are on all this. Another brutal loss from Milwaukee Bucks, but we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news. So we'll see you guys tomorrow.